You don't lose because you lack skill. You lose because you misunderstand yourself. Trading isn't a battle between you and the market. It's a battle between discipline and emotion, between who you are and who you become when money is at risk. Every chart you open is a mirror. It reflects your fears, your greed, your doubt. It reveals how you handle uncertainty, how you respond to pain, and how quickly you forget your plan when chaos whispers your name. The truth is, every trader wants control. But the more you try to control the outcome, the less control you have over your own behavior. That's why professionals think differently. They don't chase certainty, they manage risk. They build their peace one decision at a time. They define exactly how much they can lose and still trade with clarity. That number is their 1R. And behind that number lies the psychology of every consistent trader you've ever admired. In this episode, you'll learn what it truly means to build your 1R like a professional, not through formulas, but through awareness, through honesty, through the quiet discipline that separates the gambler from the operator. This is Mind Over Markets, a place where trading meets introspection, where strategy meets psychology, and where the real edge is not found on the chart, but in the mind behind the mouse. Let's begin. You think you're managing your trades, but most of the time, your trades are managing you. You open the chart, you see a setup that looks perfect. You tell yourself you'll risk just 1%, but the moment you hit buy something, changes. Your heart beats faster. You stop thinking in probabilities. You start thinking in money, in winning, in being right. And in that single second, the market has already taken control of your mind. This isn't about indicators. This isn't about strategies. This is about the invisible war that happens inside your head every time you risk something that matters. Because no trader ever blows up from one bad setup. They blow up because they never truly understood what 1R really means. 1R, one unit of risk, one expression of how much pain you are willing to feel without losing yourself. You see, risk management isn't numbers. It's psychology disguised as math. Most traders think they can outsmart the market with better entries, smarter exits, or faster reactions. But the pros know something different. The game isn't about being right. It's about staying sane long enough to let probability do its work. You lose not because your system failed, but because you failed to stay within your own emotional boundaries. You over-leverage because you want to feel alive. You move your stop because you want to avoid pain. You double down because you're desperate to erase regret. That's not trading. That's self-sabotage with a chart. There's a truth that every professional eventually accepts. Trading is not about controlling the market. It's about controlling yourself when you can't. And that's why 1R matters. Because 1R is not a rule. It's a mirror. It shows you who you are when you lose. Most people think risk management means cutting losses early. But the truth is deeper. It means learning to define what losing even means for you and accepting it before the trade begins. When you define your 1R, you're not setting a number, you're drawing a psychological boundary around your sanity. And here's the paradox. The more clearly you define that boundary, the freer you become, because now you can operate inside a space where pain has already been priced in. There's no fear left to control you. That's the foundation of every professional trader's mind. But let's be honest. You don't want to risk 1%. You want to make 10. You want to recover from that last loss. You want to prove that you still have it. That's the human condition. We are built to chase pleasure and avoid pain. And in trading, those instincts destroy us. The brain releases dopamine every time you imagine a big win. It tricks you into believing you deserve it. It whispers, just this once, size up a little more. And before you know it, your position size has doubled, your heart rate has tripled, and your account is one bad candle away from collapse. You call it intuition, but it's not intuition, it's addiction. Real professionals understand this. They don't trade for excitement, they trade for consistency, because excitement is emotional volatility, and volatility is the enemy of discipline. So how do you build your 1R like a pro? You start with brutal honesty. Ask yourself, how much can I lose before I lose focus? How much pain can I absorb before I start breaking my own rules? That's your true risk tolerance, not the number your spreadsheet tells you, the number your emotions reveal to you. For some, it's 1%. For others, it's 0.5%. For some, it's not about money at all. It's about ego. Because once your ego gets hurt, you'll risk everything to feel right again. That's why sizing matters. Sizer is not about capital efficiency. It's about emotional containment. When you set your 1R properly, you are designing a psychological buffer between you and chaos. Your position size becomes a reflection of your self-control. Your stop loss becomes a declaration of trust in your own discipline. And when you accept your max loss, you reclaim your power from the market. You're saying, this is as far as I'll go. Beyond this, I am no longer the trader I want to be. That line is sacred. Cross it too often and you stop being a trader. You become a gambler with good intentions. The market doesn't punish bad entries. It punishes emotional dishonesty. Every time you move your stop, you're lying to yourself. Every time you double your size after a win, you're feeding your ego, not your edge. You cannot master risk until you master the urge to feel in control. And that's the irony. The more you try to control the outcome, the more the market exposes your weakness. Professional traders don't control outcomes, they control process. They surrender the illusion of certainty and find peace inside discipline. Because discipline is not restriction, it's liberation. When you trade within your 1R, you're not being conservative, you're being consistent. And consistency compounds. 1R is not about protecting money, it's about protecting mindset. The trader who understands 1R can survive every losing streak because their self-worth isn't attached to their P&L. But the trader who doesn't will keep changing systems, chasing setups, blaming the market, and wondering why it always ends the same. The answer was never in the chart. It was in your relationship with risk. Every trader has a breaking point. It isn't written in a rule book, and you won't find it on a chart. It shows itself in silence, the pause after a losing trade, the moment you hover over the mouse wondering if you should take one more. That pause is where your entire career is decided. Because inside that space lives a question. Can you still follow your plan after pain has visited your account? Most can't. Not because they lack knowledge, but because they have no boundary between self-worth and outcome. They see a loss as a reflection of who they are. They see red numbers and feel shame instead of data. They forget that every loss is a payment for insight, not a verdict of failure. That's why professionals create a max loss rule. It's not a financial threshold. It's a psychological airbag. Imagine driving a car without brakes. You might go faster for a while, but eventually the road will end. Your max loss is your brake pedal. It's the moment you choose self-preservation over self-destruction. When you decide in advance how much you can lose in a day, you free your mind from chaos because the decision has already been made before emotion can interfere. It's not weakness to stop, it's wisdom. Professionals stop because they know that the market is infinite, but their emotional capital is not. You can refill your account. You can rebuild a system. But once you drain your focus, you trade blind. Every trader who has ever blown up knew the rule they broke. They just believed they'd be the exception. That belief is ego in disguise. Ego tells you that one more trade will fix the pain, that the next candle will validate your worth. But ego never wants balance. It only wants victory. And victory without discipline always costs more then it pays. You might think stopping after hitting max loss means giving up opportunity. But what you're actually doing is preserving the most valuable edge you own: clarity. Clarity is the trader's oxygen. Without it, even the best setups become random noise. So when you close your platform after a tough day, you're not quitting. You're protecting the part of you that can think clearly tomorrow. That's what risk management truly is: not math, but emotional maintenance. Every great trader has a ritual for recovery. Some journal, some walk, some sit in silence until the urge to trade fades. They understand that discipline isn't built in euphoria. It's forged in restraint. You cannot meditate your way into emotional control while you are still chasing candles. You earn control through repetition of boundaries kept. Each time you honor your 1R, you train your brain to trust you. And when your mind trusts you, fear loses its grip. That trust compounds faster than capital. It becomes your invisible edge, the calm others mistake for talent. Now let's talk about the story your brain tells after a loss. It whispers, "You need to make it back." It floods you with images of the chart reversing the moment you exit. It convinces you that patience equals missing out. But what it's really doing is trying to restore emotional equilibrium. Your brain hates uncertainty. It would rather be wrong and active than right and still. That's why the best traders fall in love with stillness. Stillness is not inactivity. It's control. It's waiting without fear. It's the silence between two decisions, the space where rationality breathes. When you design your trading around 1R, you build that stillness into your system. You remove the need to react. You replace chaos with structure. You say to yourself, "I know exactly how much I can lose, and I know exactly when I'll stop." Those two sentences are what separate professionals from hopefuls, because hope is emotional leverage, and leverage without structure always collapses. Let's be honest. There will be days when you follow every rule and still end red. You'll question the point of discipline. You'll ask yourself why you even bother if the outcome feels the same. That's when most traders abandon their plan right before discipline would have paid off. They forget that risk management isn't supposed to make you rich fast. It's supposed to keep you in the game long enough for edge to compound. Every losing day is rent. Every controlled loss is tuition. Every session you survive intact is another brick in your emotional fortress. The amateurs crave adrenaline. The professionals crave repetition, because repetition kills fear. And fear is the true drawdown. Over time, your 1R becomes your identity. It's the voice in your head that says, "I know who I am, and I know what I stand to lose." You stop measuring success in dollars. You start measuring it in discipline kept. That's the transformation from trader to risk manager, from gambler to operator. You'll notice something else too. When you finally respect your 1R, the market starts to respect you back, not because it changes, but because you do. You stop chasing setups that don't fit. You stop forcing trades out of boredom. You stop negotiating with your plan. You become a quiet observer in a world full of noise. And that's when consistency begins, because consistency isn't born from brilliance. It's born from boredom mastered. The pros understand that monotony is the price of mastery. They trade the same setups, risk the same amount, exit the same way, not because they lack creativity, but because they value predictability over excitement. Their charts look simple. Their days look repetitive. But beneath that simplicity lies a mind free from emotional turbulence. That's the destination of every serious trader, not constant profit, but constant presence. Presence inside the plan. Presence inside the loss. Presence inside the process. The market is a mirror. It doesn't reward knowledge. It reflects self-awareness. You don't get the results you want. You get the results that match the truth you operate from. So when your 1R is unclear, your results are chaos. When your 1R is solid, your results become predictable. Because discipline is the language the market actually understands. And every trade you take is a sentence in that language. There's a quiet moment that comes after you stop chasing, after you stop trying to force the market to love you, after you finally surrender to the rhythm of probabilities. That moment feels empty at first, because for the first time you're no longer trading emotion, you're trading truth. Truth is slower than adrenaline. It doesn't give you the rush. It gives you something better: stability. When you build your 1R like a professional, you are building a foundation of inner stillness. Every rule becomes a reminder that you no longer serve chaos. Every stop loss becomes a promise kept. You begin to see patterns not just in price, but in yourself. You notice the subtle pulse of temptation before you oversize. You feel the tiny rise of tension before you move your stop. And instead of reacting, you breathe. That breath is your edge. Because discipline lives in the space between impulse and execution, you start realizing that 1R isn't about limiting your potential. It's about defining your presence. When you know exactly what you can lose, you stop fearing the unknown. You start thinking clearly. And clarity attracts opportunity. Every trade becomes less about outcome and more about calibration. Each win or loss is just data feeding your evolution. This is where trading turns into meditation, not the kind that empties the mind, but the kind that sharpens it. Every candle becomes a breath. Every R becomes a reflection. You begin to understand that consistency is a spiritual act. It's the art of staying faithful to your process in a world built to test your patience. You will still feel fear. You will still feel greed. But those emotions will no longer command you. They'll simply pass through like weather across an unshakable mountain. That's what it means to think in R. You stop measuring your worth by the size of your wins. You measure it by the integrity of your process. When you operate like this, the numbers follow. The equity curve begins to reflect the internal curve of your growth. You realize that markets don't reward brilliance. They reward endurance. The one who survives the longest wins by default. And survival comes from structure. Structure born from clarity. Clarity born from knowing your 1R. There's freedom in this discipline. You no longer need to predict. You no longer need to hope. You simply execute, observe, adjust, and repeat. And somewhere along that repetition, something beautiful happens. You stop needing the market to validate you. Your peace is no longer tied to your profit. Your confidence no longer depends on a green day. You wake up calm because you know exactly who you are and exactly how much you can lose without losing yourself. That's real power. Power isn't control over outcome. It's composure within uncertainty. You don't fight the storm anymore. You become the sailor who reads the wind. You respect its force, but you trust your vessel because you built it with discipline, not ego. You stop chasing trades. You let them come to you because patience is the highest form of confidence. And slowly you notice how everything else in your life changes too. You spend less time checking charts and more time checking your state. You replace reaction with awareness. You replace noise with direction. That's what trading psychology really means, not learning how to suppress emotion, but learning how to work with it. Fear becomes feedback. Greed becomes a signal. Loss becomes a teacher. Every emotion that once controlled you now informs you, because emotions are not the enemy. Undisciplined emotions are. When you anchor yourself in 1R, you create space between stimulus and response. That space is where wisdom grows. You learn to pause before revenge trading. You learn to accept red days as the cost of participation. You learn to detach from the illusion of certainty, and that detachment is where peace lives. There's a quote I remind myself of often. The goal isn't to eliminate risk, it's to build a mind that can live peacefully beside it. That's the essence of risk management. It's not about numbers on a screen. It's about training your nervous system to remain steady when uncertainty knocks. Because in trading, uncertainty isn't a threat, it's the environment. And the trader who adapts becomes the environment itself. You start realizing that success in markets mirrors success in life. Boundaries protect both. Clarity drives both. Discipline sustains both. 1R becomes more than a concept. It becomes a philosophy. It whispers to you when you're tempted to overreach. It reminds you that freedom without structure is just another form of chaos, and that's what separates the professional from everyone else. The amateur asks, "How much can I make?" The professional asks, "How much can I afford to lose and still trade tomorrow?" The amateur fights their emotions. The professional studies them. The amateur reacts. The professional responds. Because response is rooted in awareness, and awareness is born from repetition. Every trade, every R, every decision is another repetition of awareness. And with each repetition, you become less the trader who needs to win and more the trader who simply executes. Execution without attachment, that's mastery. You might notice that your account grows slower this way, but it grows steadier. And over time, steady becomes exponential. Compounding doesn't just apply to money, it applies to mindset. Each time you choose discipline over impulse, you add 1 more % to your internal equity curve. That's how pros build longevity, not by avoiding loss, but by managing reaction. You learn that there is no bad day as long as you stayed within plan. There is no big mistake as long as you respected your limit. Because risk management is self-respect in motion. When you protect your downside, you protect your identity. And when your identity is stable, your performance becomes predictable. Eventually, you stop asking how to win. You start asking how to stay aligned. Aligned with your plan. Aligned with your edge. Aligned with your peace. That alignment is what allows the pro to make fewer trades, but extract more meaning from each. Because meaning multiplies focus, and focus, when sustained, creates flow. In that flow, you begin to sense the market differently. You no longer see random candles. You see behavior. You see psychology unfolding in price. You realize the market isn't against you. It's just a mirror reflecting everyone's collective emotion. And you are simply one participant who has learned to remain calm inside that storm of human impulse. That's what it means to be a professional risk manager. You don't predict the future, you prepare for it. Preparation gives you confidence. Confidence gives you patience. Patience gives you consistency. And consistency gives you freedom. Freedom from anxiety. Freedom from chasing. Freedom from proving. When you understand your 1R, you reclaim your life from randomness. You stop gambling for excitement and start operating with intention. You become deliberate, methodical, peaceful, and in that peace, profit becomes inevitable because the market rewards clarity. And clarity begins the moment you decide to define your risk, respect your boundary, and trade your plan. So the next time you sit before your screen, remember this: control your 1R and you control your mind. Control your mind and you control your future. Every great trader you admire has already learned this truth. Their success wasn't built on perfect setups, but on perfect self-control. And now it's your turn. Define your 1R, honor it, live by it. Because once you master your risk, the market no longer tests you, it reflects you. And that reflection is the calm, consistent trader you were meant to become. If you've made it this far, you've already proven something most traders never do. You have patience, patience to listen, patience to reflect, patience to face the uncomfortable truth that mastery is not found in shortcuts but in stillness. Risk management isn't about protecting your capital. It's about protecting your clarity. Because once you lose clarity, no strategy can save you. Remember this every time you trade. You're not here to win every day. You're here to stay long enough for your edge and your discipline to compound. So build your 1R like a pro. Respect your boundaries. Honor your rules. And when you feel lost, return to the simplicity of your plan. Control your 1R and you control your emotions. Control your emotions and the market becomes just another environment, not an enemy. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be faithful, faithful to your process, faithful to your self-awareness. Because in the end, trading isn't about predicting price. It's about mastering presence. This is Mind Over Markets, where you learn not to trade harder, but to think deeper.